Cliff, what are you flying? Are you flying a Lancaster?
Lancaster.
Okay. And it had 50s in a top turret?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. 50 caliber and 4 303s in the tail.
Rear. Okay.
Yeah. And so anyway, I had this funny feeling about it, and I told him, you just keep your guns right on him. And I had said first to him, and if he does anything stupid, you nail him. And he came back and said, Skipper, what do you mean stupid? And I said, I'll tell you when. So that was that. So anyway, we finally decided it had to be 100 group. One of them has killed his navigator, or he's got instruments are gone and he got in the wrong direction or something. No reason for him to be here at all. And so we finally decided that's what it has to be, 100 group. Well, the Lank is a little faster than the B-17, and I said, boy, he's come all the way out here with on the trip. He's short of fuel. And so I said, I'm going to slow down just a little bit to give him a break. He'll be in the air longer, and we'll warn the navigator. You plot exactly. They're going to have to bail the crew out. They'll never make it back home. And get the position so that we'd be able to report it, where they went down and so on. Anyway, that was that. So, of course, as I pulled the power back just gently, just knocked about 10 knots off my speed. Of course, he didn't expect that, and he went ahead of me. And he was about 100 yards ahead. And all of a sudden, he just did that. He dropped down about, and you know what that was for? To cut off my mid-upper gunner, who couldn't fire through the aircraft to follow him, and open fire on us. And there was, now they carry about 6 gunners, but there was only one gun firing at us. The tracer was every 6th round is a tracer, and you can see them coming at you. And now my bomb aimer, after has done the job and so on, he comes up out of the nose and sits with the navigator. He has a bench and his table is there, and he's got a curtain around him. And so Mac McKinnon, my bomb aimer, was working with Bob, my navigator. And when I said, now they're right behind me, and my engineer was standing right beside me, and the table is behind, and he was sitting in the bench there facing that way. And Bob generally would work with him, or Mac, with the navigator Bob, and if he wanted him to take a bearing or something like that. But anyway, he would be with him and doing whatever the navigator wanted him to do. So when I started talking about this aircraft out here and so on, he pulled the curtain back, and I'm sitting here now, and he got in front of me, kind of not in front, but looking just to see the aircraft. And just then they opened fire on us when they got down at here, and one gun was firing 50 caliber, and the tracers, of course, were coming at it. I could feel it hitting the aircraft, and right through the nose. Mac was standing up beside me. Here's the engineer here, and here's my wireless operator back about here. And it came through the nose of the aircraft. The only person they hit was Mac, who was standing beside me, and just about took his foot off with a 50 caliber. And down he went. In the meantime, when I saw those tracers coming, they tell me I just yelled, "Look out!" and I just hauled back on the old Lank and took her up like this, and peeled off and lost him immediately. And it was just straightened out and singing, and somebody called, I think it was the wireless operator, said, "My God, Mac's been hit." And so I said, God, where? So they told me, and I said, well, get the boot off and so on. And we carried big, I don't know what you'd call them, but big things. You could just undo this and open up a big thing to put on a wound. And with the things to tie around, if you get hit in the arm or anything, you'd cover about like that, or leg, or any part of your body. And so they were tied in piece, so you could just grab them and pull them off. So they got one of those when they got his boot off and got it on and tied up. And so then I told a navigator to give me a heading for the emergency. There's 3 emergency fields on and this was called Woodbridge. And it handled crippled aircraft and anybody that needed help. And it was an amazing place. They had three runways parallel. The whole width of 3 runways, you know, was incredible. White lights down the middle, I think red on this side and green on this side. 3 runways. And you could cut that way right across them if you wanted to. There was no, anyway. So when I got within, I said to Bob, tell me when we're within 15 miles of Woodbridge. So he told me, and I called, and they said, what's your emergency? And I said, I have a wounded crewman. He said, can you get your wheels down? I said, I'll tell you in a minute. I haven't tried. And so the wheels came down all right. And so he said, land between the white lights. And so I just came in and did a normal landing. And as the old lank was slowing down to about 60, I looked out and there was an ambulance off one wind clip and a crash truck off the other, right with me.
Huh.
And they said, I said, where do you want me to go? And he said, just stop where you are. And so I did, and just shut down, and they were on the aircraft and like that, and had him out before I could even get out. And took off. Then they put a truck out and picked up my crew, and I said, take us to the hospital. So anyway, we found old Mac was, by that time they'd put him under, and they were using big tweezers to pull the leather and stuff out of it, you know.
Did he save his foot?
That's the last, oh no.
The foot was gone.
Oh yeah, they had amputated up the foot, like, you know. But that was all, I found that out later. But,
How was the plane?
plane was okay. But found out later, and we had that .50 caliber had gone right through the main spar. Underneath the big I-beam, you know, you're saying you have to climb over it to get in the line, to get up to the cockpit. And it's a big I-beam that tapers out as it goes out. One solid deal is the wing. And we found out that the aircraft should have been grounded. Instead of that, they welded a thing on each side of the thing. And we had already taken off on another trip, and when the word came in that the aircraft's to be grounded.
So Cliff, that was pretty, so you discovered something there then? Like a strategy the Germans are probably using, or?
Well, now, when I get back, of course, get the intelligence officer, and I said, here's what happened. And he said, oh, you know what that is? And I said, no. He said, there's a German crew on in that aircraft. He said they captured fortresses and other types of aircraft, and they would enter the bomber stream, and you wouldn't shoot at a fortress, you know.
Wow, sly
And
devils.
we don't know how many times that this has happened, but anyway, they told me this story, so you're just one of the unlucky ones. Until about less than 2 years ago, there's a professor at the military at our RMC was writing a book on Bomber Command. He knew all about, or found all about, the most secret German organization, so secret that even the ground crew working on the aircraft didn't know what they did or where they were going or anything else. They had captured over 40 fortresses and other aircraft, even Russian aircraft that had been shot down or force landed, or in the daylight. You could be hit pretty badly in the daylight and get your aircraft down safely, or at least you may do crash landings and so on. Anyway, they would confiscate these aircraft, and this outfit was called something BG-200 or something was the only name to it. And he had earlier, the reason that he had the story in there, that a friend of mine in back east had said, Cliff had a weird, you're writing this book about Bomber Command, but you should get a hold of him because he had a weird thing happen that would interest you. So in the book, he said Cliff thought that it was just a fortress with a German crew that sneaked into the bomber stream on their way home and would shoot down aircraft. He said that wasn't it at all. This was the most highly classified organization in the war.
Wow.
And what they did or what they were doing, no one knows to this day. At least according to the professor, also the guy running this organization had every award that Hitler could give him. There were no more, and he was the commander of the thing. They called him he was the general in command of bombing. And that's all they would say about him. And so anyway, to show that there's a little, every once in a while there's justice. At the end of the war, he took off, and no one ever found him again, knew where he was till he showed up in Argentina. And the Argentinians had been there ever since. Now this is years later that the Argentinians bought a Lancaster and wanted to get it, I suppose, for some reason. And it was, someone flew it down there, and they asked him to test fly it. Strangely enough, it blew up,
Oh, you're kidding.
and he was killed.
Isn't that something?
And they whether the RAF fixed it, but they flew it down, or somebody flew it down, and so on. But anyway, so in his book, he said that here's what really happened. And I didn't know that until I read his book. He was down at Nanton about a year and a half ago or so, and sold and had his book, and so he had a copy, and he
Who would that be? I
wrote some
wonder.
stuff in it.
So we were going to talk about the war is winding down in Europe, and could you explain anything about Tiger Force for Japan?
Well, I bumped into, I was lucky that my squadron commander, when I went to 419 Squadron, was a fellow by the name of Bill Pleasance. He's from out in Victoria, I think. And he finished his tour about 2 weeks after I arrived there. And he was promoted to group captain and sent down as station commander at Linton-on-Ouse. So that's where 426 Squadron was. So I got sent down there. We lost, I told you, I think it was 3 or 4 squadron commanders on one night, bad night. And I was sent down to take command of 426 Squadron. So of course the station commander was my old squadron commander up at, so we got along fine, and so we finished the, do you want me to go on about the end of the war business thing? Well, on May the 8th, 1945, this is a familiar date, I was briefing the squadron on a daylight target. It was about 10 o'clock in the morning. And they interrupted my briefing. Somebody came to the door and opened it a crack and signaled it for the intelligence officer to come out. And, oh yeah, before I get to that, we got a top secret message to the base and about 2 weeks before that. And the station commander called the 2 squadrons commanders down there, and we went down. And they were worried. They said, we think this thing's going to wind up pretty soon. And here's something that we think we're a little concerned about, that some young buck is going to make an arrangement with his ground crew, you know, and fill a tank full. He's going to head for home and say nothing in the middle of the night or something, and fly and get into Canada and land in the aircraft and say, I'm here, and do what you like with me, but I'm home. You see, and we're afraid that that might happen. And they might do that when the weather is such that they're not going to make it home. There's a danger, always a danger of that. So the plan was, we called it Plan A. They got the engineering officer in and said, you get about 2 or 3 of your senior NCOs, 3 reliable sergeants, and disconnect the starting motors on one side so that he can't even taxi the aircraft. And 2 engines are over here, you can start them, but you can't start those 2. And that'll take care of that. So that was our Plan A. So anyway, our chief of maintenance was sitting there when I walked out, you see, and so when I got out there, the intelligence officers looked at me and I said, what's going on? He said, it's over. And I said, what's over? I'm not finished yet. And he said, the war, it's over. They said they can't find Hitler, they think he committed suicide, and they're looking for Admiral Donitz, D-O-E-N-I-T-Z or something, who's the next in command to sign the surrender papers. But anyway, it's over. So God, as I say, I had the thrill of my life to be able to come in and look down at about 200 kids. When I look back now, average age 22, and tell them they were going to get home because the war was over. Yeah.
God, what a moment that must
was
have
I
been.
said, it's a moment in my life I'll never forget.
Yeah.
Maps went up in the air and the whole place exploded. Yeah. So then, of course, before I said any of that, I looked at the chief of maintenance and said, Plan A. And he said, he looked at me again. And I said, Plan A. So that night we had a party like you wouldn't believe. And so we said to them all, a lot of people have been pretty good to you over here. Tonight you bring them all on the base. We're going to have a big party. So we put about 6 barrels of beer. We cleaned out a hangar and put about 6 barrels of beer out there. And you know, we used to get packages from home. And with things in it that the Brits hadn't seen in years. There were children, you think that war nearly lasted 6 years. There were little fellows there that didn't know what an orange looked like. And we brought all our stuff down and put it in a big barrel, and they could take what they wanted. And strangely enough, at about 11:30, the party was over. Everybody was going so hard that last month that everybody was exhausted, and I noticed that a lot of them were gone to bed. But it was a pretty good party.
So how old were you then, Cliff? If they're
Well,
22.
I was 28, I think, and they called me the old man. We were going into the briefing one day, and you know, if you're commanding a squadron, you got to be. And I could pick any target that I want to fly on. Just don't pick an easy one. In no time at all, they have a label for you. And so I heard a young fellow behind me, and he said, "Damn it, this is going to be a rough one. The old man's flying tonight." He's the old man.
28.
Yes, I looked an old man to an 18-year-old. Average age 22. Imagine, that just shook me when I found that out. I knew they were pretty young, but we had young skippers, you know, that 18 years old taking a 4-engine bomber, 8 hours like sometimes into Germany and back.
It's incredible what they did.
Oh yeah, fantastic.
So Ben, have you heard of, at this stage, have you heard of Tiger Force, or just going to be after?
So, I had heard about it, but that's all that we were going to go. And so we were in a pub anyway, and Black Mike, our AOC, Air Officer Commanding Bomber Command, or 6th Group I should say, was there because it was fairly close to the headquarters. We had driven down, and again, station commander and I we had a stand down kind of and said, let's go down and do a little pub crawl. So we bumped into them in the thing, and we got chatting, and so Air Vice Marshal or Air Marshal brought it up, and he said, "You thought anything about this Tiger Force?" And I'd had a couple of beers in me at that time, and I said, "Yes, and I want the 1st Squadron to go to the Pacific." So that was that. I think he said, "You're kidding," and I said, "No, I've forgotten it went something like that." I said, "No." And so about a week later, I get the word, "How soon can you get ready to go home?" And I said, "Give me 10 minutes and I'll be there wherever you want me." So anyway, I was sent home right away, and I said, where do I go?" And he said, "You're going to take 428 Squadron, which happened to be the squadron at Middleton St. George, the Ghost Squadron, and that's the one I was going to take. I was hoping I'd get 426, but we handed 426 became a transport squadron. That's, we know, it's taking our troops now to Afghanistan and bringing home the casualties. I was the last wartime commander of that squadron. So I said, where am I going to get the squadron organized? And they said a town in Nova Scotia called Yarmouth. I had a big smile on my face, and afterwards station commander said, geez, you seem to be happy about going to Yarmouth. I said, you bet I'm happy. That's where my wife lives.
And that's something.
Yeah, I was just lucky as hell. I met Sue when I was on that, doing the flying instructor at the instrument school.
Oh.
See, that was in Yarmouth.
Okay. So that'd be about for 42 then? Or
That'd be-
43?
Oh, no, that was 40, yeah, 42. Yeah, 42, I went to Yarmouth, yeah.
Oh, so your wife waited for you until
Well,
you got home.
You know,
You married her
amazing.
before the war.
I've had, so, oh no, this was after, when I was in the war, when I was down there. You know, it's amazing what can happen to you. I get down to Yarmouth on the flip of a coin. It come up tails, Sue and I had never met. I wouldn't have gone to Yarmouth. It was between when they were looking for an experienced Hudson pilot. There were two of us in the squadron that had been there longer than the others that were there, up there in Cold Harbor. Excuse me. And so it's between, the squadron commander says, between you and we called this guy the Doc. He was a lawyer, just graduated before the war started. And says, between you and Doc, you settle it, who goes. And of course I said to him, he was from Ontario, and I said, I'm from the Maritimes. I'm a New Brunswick boy now. I should be the one to go there. And he said, you know, I don't care what you're from or where or what. I want to get out of this mud hole here. So anyway, he said, and the CO said, why don't you flip a coin? So I said, okay, that's what we'll do. But none of this catching it and flipping this stuff. It's going to hit the floor, and I'll call it in the air. Here's a quarter. So anyway, it came up, and I,
Here we go.
there. It came up in my favor, and
And off you went to
we
Yarmouth.
went to Yarmouth. So that happened and that's where I met Sue, and we've been married 68 years.
Wow, congratulations.
Yeah. I think I have about 23 or 4 grandchildren and great-grandchildren and a great-great.
Lucky you.
Does the whole squadron go to Yarmouth, or just you?
No, just me.
Just
And
you.
they were gonna send me, what we were gonna do is they were gonna send me a bunch of Lancasters, about a dozen Lancasters. And we're just to keep the bunch that we select to go, because we're gonna go back to England and pick up Lincolns, the stretch Lancaster. And that they were just beginning to build. And, well, they had a lot of them, but they would have enough, they figured, you know, by. There, thanks. So we'd go back and pick up these, and they had a trip for us on Okinawa Island. And we were gonna do the night work, and the Americans do the daylight jobs in Japan like we did in Europe.
How far did you get with your planning?
Well, they gave me 6 weeks leave to start with. So I had, as they were coming over, I had said you can have anyone you want, you know, and we want this to be, we're gonna be flying with the Americans out on their deal, so pick good guys. So I had my flight commanders all picked, and they were there, and we were getting ready to go back. As a matter of fact, within a week, I'd have been phoning Tiger headquarters in Halifax and said, we're ready to go. Excuse me, and when the phone rang one morning in my office, and it was, Bellacci, John Bellacci,
Yes.
do you?
Mm-hmm.
Well, his brother-in-law was the station commander at Yarmouth, Ralph Davis. And he phoned me in the morning. He says, I was always called Blackie. He said, Blackie, I don't think you're going to be going back to England. And I said, oh, what's happening? Well, they said, I got a message here that they dropped a thing called an atomic bomb, whatever in hell that is. And I said, on Hiroshima, and I don't think the war's going to last much longer. It took the whole city out, one bomb. And I said, holy mackerel. And so, what was it, 2 weeks later they dropped on Nagasaki and the war was over. But it was Ralph's, and yesterday or the Thursday, Jack was for lunch again for the first time in quite a long time at our aircrew luncheon.
Oh, okay.
And Ralph had died about 2 years ago.
What was Ralph's last name again?
Davis,
Ralph Davis.
yeah. And we had we're not on this, this isn't on.
I can turn this off if you would rather. We were just getting the last bits of those stories about the end of the war.
Did
Oh
they
yeah,
give any aircraft?
they delivered about a dozen Lanks to me in Yarmouth,
Oh, okay.
yeah,
In anticipation of Tiger Force.
Tiger Force.
Was there any
It's a good-
changes to the aircraft they were anticipating?
Well, the Lincoln, I hadn't seen a Lincoln, but it was apparently a stretch length, like the
Okay.
B-29, you know,
Yeah.
it's a stretch fortress, just bigger. So that's where everything stopped.
Yeah.
We just sent everybody home that wanted to go.
Was there anything else that you'd like to share with us before we formally close?
Oh,
Cliff, you didn't mention, I don't believe, about the DFC. You talked about your Croix de Guerre, but I don't know if you mentioned about the, did you mention it?
Your Distinguished Flying Cross. Was
Yeah,
there
we talked about
something
that.
remarkable that we should know about when you received your Distinguished Flying Cross?
well, no, I don't think there's, well, we had a little bit of a rough time, but, it was a case where we were on a target that, in a daylight raid, and when we got there, the target was covered in cloud, and so they were, when I happened to come, I was flying in the tail end of the thing that day, and what happened was that just as we were using it, we went to Wanganui, we called it Wanganui marking. They mark your release point in the sky. And this Pathfinder, they do this. And what they do is, there's the target. So they'll put they'll drop a thing and it's just like a big blob of ink, you know, it's just, and red or green or whatever it happens to be. Now, remember up at 20,000 or 18,000 feet, there's sometimes can be pretty good wind, so that thing would explode and do this sort of, and we knew it was moving, you know, so they'd have to keep backing it up, which they did. So you have to, if you're going to hit that target, then you've got to get, and you're here. You can't do this, because when you drop it, the bomb's going to go over there. So you've got to get onto this proper heading, and the master bomber tells you, you know, hit the marker. The bomb aim, what he does, he sets everything at 0 on us, on his bomb aiming equipment. And we got over the top of that and pressed the load and dumped the load. So it gets pretty crowded when everybody gets in here. I'm at the tail end of this thing, and just as we're coming up to we're maybe 2 miles from the marker, and Mac, my bomber, said, "My God, I can see the target. Break in the clouds." I guess it just happened. So I said, "Are you sure?" And he said, "Yeah, because there was a big oil refinery right by a river that we were going after." And so I said, "I'll do an orbit and we'll do another run." So I looked around, said to Mateo, "All right to do a turn to the left?" And he says, "Yep, if you do it right now." So I just did a steep turn. We came around. Now the guys on the ground, boy, they know they've got a target when something's doing this. So they started really pumping it at us, and so I'm not sure I want this to be in this thing.
We can leave it out, because
Leave
it's
it
at the
out.
very end.
Yeah,
Yeah.
leave it out. And so, anyway, they're really pumping it at me, and so we come around and do the run when he's now aiming, you know, got the proper deal, and we gotta hit, we think, from the photograph, you know, every aircraft had a camera on the base of it that took 4 pictures when you're on bomb. He presses that bomb release and the stuff starts coming off like this. Doesn't do that. It comes off, so you see it goes down in a string like that. And so the picture, or the camera starts takes a picture from your release point. Well, we're kind of over cloud, but that big break was ahead of us, and it takes 4 pictures. And the last picture would show the target, and it would show what the position, how accurate your load was dropped. And so anyway, we had I think 119 holes in the aircraft, and they shot out my starboard inner engine before we got on the bomb run. So I had to make some quick switches to get that aircraft steadied down on 3, and we got through it. Anyway, and I could feel the aircraft getting hit, and but we hung in there and came back with, quote, "a valuable picture." It said, despite the failure of one engine and so on, we came back with a valuable photograph.
Meaning you'd hit the target.
That was roughly it, yeah.
You must have been, were you scared ever?
Oh, yeah, but it's funny, I think back, and I'm sure everyone does in things like this. You're so involved, and there's so many things you have to be doing, and so on, and you got other guys depending on you that you don't have time to be scared. You know,
So
I
Cliff,
sometimes think I must be something wrong with me.
so Cliff, I'm very curious though, why would, like, you've just told a very gripping story, really kind of a gripping story. Why would you not want that included? Like you just, I'm just, do you understand why I'm asking that?
Well, most people don't want you to think you're telling them you're a hero or something.
Oh,
But
it's
but it doesn't-
modesty.
It's not,
Modesty.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't sound like, it just sounds like you're doing this thing that you have to do and you're doing it. You don't sound like you don't sound like you're blowing yourself up as a hero at all. You're just saying, here's what happened, and then as a result of this.
But to me, afterwards, I think, well, God, somebody would say, did you hear what Blackie said, you know, guys, get 2 more guys like him, we'd have won the war early.
But
Well,
I'll-
I think the real truth is that everybody was out there doing remarkable things, that
Yeah,
saying about,
exactly.
it was a lot of ordinary men doing extraordinary things.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and a lot of them, a lot more than I did. I'll tell you.
And another side, I work with students though, Cliff,
Yeah.
and students would want to understand that.
Yeah.
They would want to understand what you just talked about. They wouldn't look at it that you were saying you were a hero. They wouldn't look at it that way. They would want to know why did you do something like that? Well, it made sense what you did, right? So I understand what you're saying. There's an audience out there that your peers that maybe you don't feel
Well,
is comfortable, but there's
and
another
other-
audience out
and other
there.
veterans, they're the guys.
Yeah, you don't want to sound like you're showboating.
That's right.
Well, it didn't sound showboating at all. It sounded like very good description.
How did you make it back with that plane that was all
Yeah.
shot up?
Oh, well, we still had 3 engines, 3 good engines, and that Lank it's a beauty. It'll bring you home. Yeah,
That's really something.
yeah, we had
Well, I'm glad you shared it with us because I was interested to hear it. But we'll respect your wishes if you would prefer not to have that
I'd
part.
prefer, yeah, I'd prefer.
Yeah.
not to, 'cause-
Cliff, someone Rory mentioned about the colors of your tie, about something about the
Oh.
colors of a tie, having meaning.
Yeah, this is an RAF tie, official tie.
Is there something about long-standing service? Do the
No.
colors indicate something about long-standing service?
No, I think it's just, this is the tie that the RAF designed for their uniform, or civilian clothes, I'm sorry,
Right.
so that people would know they were in the RAF.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
If an RAF guy came by, they would know right away.
I see. It's for civilians to
Yeah.
wear
Yeah.
to show they were in the RAF. Because it was a question. I just
Well,
thought Rory had mentioned this question to ask about the tie, and I just wasn't sure.
Ex-veterans
Would recognize it.
recognize it immediately.
Okay.
Well, Cliff, if you don't have anything further, I think
Well, that was excellent.
we've got a lot of great information, so thank you.
Well, I hope it's satisfactory.
Oh, it's
Yes.
excellent.
Yeah, it was really interesting. Thank you.
No, and Rory was saying they don't have, like, there isn't a lot of information like on that. That the Pacific area is really kind of an interesting area.
Yeah.
Not as many
Well,
guys went. They don't remember as many things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it was interesting that my son sent me this story about that. I'm pretty sure that that's the only aircraft that went missing up in Cole Harbor. And it was a real mystery because no one found anything. No wreckage or anything, it's generally something that wash up on the shore or something, but.
Strange.
I think the aircraft number was 915, if I recall. And don't put that down because I don't.
Quite remember if that was
I
it.
could
But
be
that-
wrong, but every one of them was just numbered in.
Yeah.
But I think it was 915, and that interested in, and I think my son knew that. That's why he sent this to me. So then I looked to see the crew, and I think about 3 of them had flown with me.
Well,
Is that right? And this is when you lost all your commanding officers?
Well, that was overseas.
Hmm.
That was the Bomber Command. Yeah.
Oh, you lost all your commanding officers during the bombing raids?
Not all of them, just.
But there were 4, I think you said,
Yeah.
3 or 4 in one night.
Yeah,
mhm.
they were.
High casualties, eh? Really high casualties.
Did your Lank have
Yeah,
a
but
name?
No, I didn't have anything painted on my aircraft.
No.
A lot of people did.
Yeah.
Some of them had some great stuff there. But I just didn't seem to be, I don't know what I would have done that wouldn't, that would mean anything. But some of them, we had tell you another little amusing story. It wasn't a happy one, but we had a bad night one in about, in 45, January 45, and we took off in some terrible weather, and they ran into freezing rain, and we lost, I've forgotten the figure now, how many aircraft we lost before we got out of England by icing. But anyway, one of them spun in, stalled, and spun right into the city of York. And it was spinning, you know, it doesn't, things don't just spin nice and smooth. I guess they're vicious, kind of. And a lot of the bombs broke loose and went into the city. But there were most of them 500-pound bombs, I think, on that particular night. But of course they won't explode because they have to drop a certain distance, and there's a little, on the tail end of the bomb, there's a little propeller, and has releases. It'll start to spin and unwind, and then that releases the striker that hits the detonator when the impact on the ground. So it didn't have time, so none of them exploded. But we had to account for them all, because years to come, construction companies may be digging up the thing, and you know, who knows how close it was of coming off. And so anyway, I had to go down and check them all. And there were 10 of them, I think it was. So they block off the streets, the whole block in a case like that. So I got 9 of them arrived for, and I got to the last one, and I had to clear through. I show my deal to get down to it. I went down about 10 houses, and it had, the bomb had come right through the little, you know how they do at the top of the door, some of the little, you know, it had come right through that door, through the floor in the cellar, in the parlor, and down into the basement. And it was down, had gone down, of course didn't explode, and it was down about the tail end of the fin of the bomb. You could see it about that far down. So I opened the door and called out, "Anybody here?" You know, and they said, "Yeah, we're down here." So there were 2 guys, 2 old boys down there. And these are bomb disposal people. Geez, I went down and they had their little stove going, of course, with a cup of tea, you know. This is just like you'd read in a story, you know. And anyway, I just got down to the bottom of the thing, and they saw that I was a wing commander, and I'm interested in what they're looking for, and so, or what they're trying to dig up. So I said, this fellow over here is just getting the thing and getting the cup for me, and I turned him down. I said, "Oh no, thank you." I said, I'm in a real hurry. I have to see some other. I was finished with it anyway, because over here, the other old guy with the crowbar is doing this, trying to get
Jamming this
that
thing.
tail end of that thing sticking. I can see there. But of course, they knew what they were doing, but I
Want to stay around and find out?
I wasn't going to hang around very long.
So you hightailed it out of there.
I got out of there. But somebody who was one of our guys, Ernie Anastasio, you know, do you know him? One of our aircrew guys.
No, I don't know him.
Ernie, well, he used to be the president of our aircrew bunch. He was reading a book one. I don't know what the thing it was, but anyway, that story was in the book.
Oh.
Is that right?
Yeah, Wing Commander Black trying to identify or thing, all that
Oh.
ran into this situation. I don't know who's. I had told that story to a few people when I got back to the squadron, and somebody must have
Written it up, yeah.
had remembered it and thought it was funny and put it in their little story.
And I guess everybody in that plane didn't make it, the one that was spiraling down.
One guy, the bomb aimer, who was a young fellow about like you know, and strong as a bull, about 6 feet tall. And he got to that, he got down into the front nose of that aircraft, and he's, you know, the G's he's pulling, and got the door off and bailed out.
Wow.
And he was so low that the chute just partly opened and he hit the side of the building, you know, sloping thing like this, and ended up out in the white line in the middle of the street and broke about half the bones in his body.
You're kidding.
And he survived
Wow.
and married the nurse that looked after him.
Isn't
He was
that
in the hospital
something?
for months and months and months.
And he's a Canadian?
Yeah.
Great story, eh?
Yeah.
Somebody, I found that out later, a lot later.
Yeah.
We had a
Wow.
reunion, 2 reunions back in England after
Well, I guess-
1976 at 426 Watton.
Did he
Back
stay in
to the
England
base.
with his wife?
I don't know, but I just heard that you remember so-and-so, and I said, I'm not sure of the name. A couple of hundred names, you know. He said, well, he's the one that survived, the only guy that survived when that spun in. Oh, yeah, he said. That was right in January of 45. And he said, well, he married his nurse.
Oh,
So he might be still over there, I don't know. He wouldn't be alive,
great.
likely.
There's a lot of mixed, did you have a lot of mixed crews there though, with Aussies or New Zealanders or Brits or?
No. Well, the only Brit, my engineer was a Brit.
Oh, okay. So the ground
For
crews
some
then.
reason, no, they flew with you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he calculates your fuel usage and watches all that sort of thing and helps you on takeoff and landings. And I'll say, give me 15 degrees of flap or something, you'll do it. And in the dark, I'm not feeling around.
Okay.
But before you went solo at night, you'd have to say, put your hand on the fuel mixture control. And you'd have to do this and say, right there, where's the undercarriage thing? And you got so you knew everything, you'd memorize the positions by, and hit them with your hand the first time.
Yeah.
well, you must have been valuable to them with all the
Yeah.
experience that you'd had.
Well, I was lucky because I had a lot of flying experience, and so but I regretted, I've thought about it many times, that I never briefed the young pilots on how to handle freezing rain. You know, icing, your aircraft starts icing up, and finally it'll just fall out of the sky.
That must have,
Because it destroys all the
Yep, integrity of the angles.
Yeah, of the airflow over your wings and
Yep.
so on. And,
that must have been difficult for you to watch that happen.
well, I didn't watch it.
You hear about it as you're,
Well, what he kept reporting, God, we lost one went down so. It wasn't until afterwards we found out this was severe icing, and I called 6 Group and headquarters and said, our meteorologist is not too sharp, and they said, God, I know why you're upset, but this was something beyond what he could forecast.
oh,
It was just it was a very small area that it was what they call a line squall. That and I could say if you start ice up, you descend, you know, and get out of that cooler air and get down, and it'll come off very quickly. There's so much air that disappears very quickly when you get, but
you didn't have the opportunity.
well, I didn't, well, I thought afterwards, damn it, he kept on climbing and just, you know, trying to climb out of it. You don't do that.
Yeah, but you were probably so busy here with so many things that you're dealing with all the time.
Yeah.
I would think that you just hindsight would be good, I'm sure, but
Yeah.
I mean, you guys are just dealing with moment to moment, another thing and another thing and another thing. Must have been hard to deal with all those things.
Well, when you get suddenly in the morning or something, your phone goes, you had a red phone in your room, and you know that's from direct call from headquarters. And if I happen to be out of the room, well, somebody, the station commander, will have the same situation, and he's generally in his office. And they put out we have what they called a tannoy, which was a speakers stuck away out in the fields and everything that you can talk into when you're talking to the world, you know. And if you're going to be on ops at night, then you secure the station right away. No one allowed on or off. And it's from then on you're pretty busy. So then I have to go into the ops room and in station headquarters with the station commander and the other squadron commander and our intelligence officers and people like that that are handpicked to sit there, and they over a what do they call it, a system anyway that nobody can tap into the line and listen to.
Oh, okay.
You know, because it's a scrambler. And the de-scrambler is right there in the room from the 6 group headquarters. You can make out anything, I guess, on it, and then it's de-scrambled. And that's when they brief us on the target, and I make notes. I have a book that I keep with all the people I select to fly that night. Like a new crew. You know, sometimes you just shake my head. I'd see the oldest guy in the bunch is likely 18. And that particular crew, they like to have their own level guys with them. I think they don't want a senior guy. That's the way it looked to me anyway, because they all seem to be the same age. And what I would do anyway, I would put them on. I'd pick an easy target for them for the first 6 trips. And if they survive that, not too far penetration into enemy territory. Lots of times you're within the bomb line when the army's moving in Europe, and we have to be accurate information the army is. And it's drawn up, and because at night you can't tell anything. And in the daytime maybe you can see far enough there, see the units or whatever. But the Battle of the Bulge, I remember you've heard about that in New Orleans when the Germans finally, and as you could see at night, the artillery fire.